the press conference with yesterday?
Well, well, first of all, the governor was giving us a little bit of a civics lesson. She used to be in the legislature herself, and so one of the things that they do is they stick their finger in the air and see which way the public sentiment wind is blowing. And so that's why we've been seeing a little bit of back and forth here, a little bit of waffling on the part of the legislature on this particular issue, because the public is kind of divided on it. Should we or should we not have a curfew? Is this an infringement on our civil rights, or has it been how we have been successful so far? And it was heartening to know that we had 0 positive cases. So the question is, whether it's by design, coincidence, divine intervention, if this is working, and so that's actually saying why mess with it right now?
Right.
Do what we're doing. So that's really what they're faced with, and that vote is going to take place about 3 o'clock this afternoon, along with 6 other bills. But most people will be keeping an eye on Senator Amanda Shelton's bill that would allow the governor to implement a curfew. Although they did amend it to include certain caveats, if you will, like it shall not extend beyond 15 calendar days, and that it should be the least restrictive means necessary. And we asked the governor about that, but she wasn't real clear on what that would mean to her. What exactly does that mean when the legislature says the curfew, if implemented, should be the least restrictive means?
That reminds me of the thing they did with the budget, and it was like, cockfighting shall be the lowest priority of enforcement ever anywhere.
Yeah. And so they kind of left it up to her interpretation of what less restrictive means, and she didn't really, at least from my point of view, didn't really explain it in great detail. She didn't say, okay, from this time to this time, and then this is what we're going to do. And so it remains to be seen what that means.
I'm wondering if she's aware of the new section that was added with the Vice Speaker's amendments that it looks like it's calling for more transparency.
Yeah, you got that amendment?
Oh, I got. Do you have a copy of the amendment?
Let me put that in the chat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put it in the chat because the Vice Speaker's office sent it to me this morning.
Because we've been hearing a lot about it.
Right. So go ahead, Bree.
All right. So prior to exercising her authority relative to curfew and shelter in place, the governor shall make available to the public: 1, any and all plans for obtaining and distributing test kits for COVID-19 and future plans for conducting tests on Guam. 2, any and all information regarding the number of PPE available to Gov Guam and plans to obtain and distribute PPE in response to the COVID public health emergency. 3, to the extent practicable, information regarding known public places at which any confirmed positive COVID-19 individual has frequented 7 days prior to testing positive. And 4, to the extent practicable, access to COVID-19 testing for individuals who have come into close contact with another confirmed positive COVID-19 individual. That's pretty...
That sounds like a veto to me.
Yeah, that would normally be subject to germaneness, I think, because it kind of has little or nothing to do with the governor's ability to impose a curfew. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see whether or not those particular amendments by the Vice Speaker kind of determine what the governor is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
We know she wants and I think that's what part of the argument between the Vice Speaker and the minority leader, Teller Tidegui, that I think you guys played that clip. I think a lot of people were listening to that clip too.
Going around, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things, those particular amendments, whether or not that would be cause for the governor to not sign the bill. She's
going to totally not sign it. The governor is looking at that and saying, I'm not going to tell you guys anything. She's not even telling anybody anything now. So I don't. And we've heard this from senators who have been calling into the show that the lines of communication, at least for the minority and certain Democrats, those lines don't even exist. What other bills though, Ness, are going to be voted on today?
Okay, I think there's 6 other bills. There's a bill by Senator Therese Terlahi regarding expedited procurement of medical supplies. There's a bill by the Vice Speaker regarding the school year for seniors. I think it's regarding, an exemption from the service learning graduation requirement. There's a total of 7 bills that would be up for voting. But like I mentioned, I think Senator Shelton's bill regarding curfew is the one that's generated the most public discussion and interest.
I'm wondering if we're going to see Bill 334 reappear.
I thought at one point that it would, and Bill 334 is the Speaker's bill that would provide the governor with the teeth, right? If you will.
This is the $5,000 ticket bill?
Well, I think it was amended.
I
know they amended it.
An up to 1,000, so to reduce it. But that has been referred back to committee. I don't think that's going to be resurrected, at least not in this particular session.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what else are you working on, Ness? I know you got a lot on your plate.
Well, I think one of the things that has been surfacing in different WhatsApp chats and social media is if the government is also working now on a plan, and they might feel it's premature, but is there, because there's a lot of national discussion, President Trump wants to start reopening the economy by the end of this month or the beginning of May. And like the governor of California has already issued like a 6-point plan for how he would reopen the country's largest economy, state economy. So is that exercise being done here? Has there been discussions? Have they brought in the Guam Chamber of Commerce, GHRA, other small businesses to plan out how we would resurrect the economy once this COVID crisis starts to wind down to a point where you can start reopening non-essential businesses? So I don't know. We haven't posed that question yet. So
yeah.
I don't know if the administration has even started looking at that issue.
I know it came up I think it was yesterday in the press conference where they didn't fully discuss it, but it was mentioned that, hey, when we get to this point where we decide which restrictions are we going to pull back on, but then she brought up, was it Singapore was the example? And Hokkaido in Japan, where they had dialed back some of the restrictions and then saw these spikes. And so now the conversation they were having yesterday was kind of mentioning that COVID comes in waves. And if you relax the restrictions, you could potentially see, these days, like they're having, I think it was like 300 some new positives in a single day.
Yeah, and that's the same debate that's going on nationally too. Is the president's push to get the economy opened as quickly as possible, risking another even worse wave of
kind of crazy. I think it's kind of crazy watching that. Like, what are you guys talking about? People, like 2,000 some people died of COVID-19 in the U.S. yesterday.
Yeah, but I do know that there are a lot of businesses now that have been receiving the federal the PPP loans, and they've actually gotten the money deposited into their accounts. So they've actually got that in hand, which is a good thing. And clearly we're going to rely primarily on federal money to keep us afloat. I don't think there's any question about that.
Right. And so that was one of the questions that was posed in the press conference yesterday, Ness, was when we get this 100, there's so many different accounts, the congressman's saying one number, the governor's saying another. I don't know what the actual number is, but one of the media did ask the governor, what are we going to use this money for? And she said a lot of it is going to be to replace, money that we've spent for the hotel quarantine, for just a bunch of different things. And then I think she also said that they're applying to be able to use the money to recoup lost revenues, which they, according to what she said, can't do right now, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, most of the times actually, the federal money, there are restrictions to it, to how it can be used, right? For those particular grants that I think it's 117.6 million or something like that. That's the money that she's been referring to. then there's also the money that for unemployment and the direct grants. Those goes to the people, and there's no restrictions on how that's going to be used. And then there's the money for the businesses, those loans that can be turned into grants after a certain period of time. Those are restricted too. I think they have to use 75% of that money, those loans, to keep employees on board, and then they can later prove that, and then they don't have to repay the loan. So there's so many different sources of money. I mean, friends of mine joking around that the Uncle Sam has opened the vault and he's cranked up the money printing press.
Well, they could print it, yeah.
There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money that's becoming available.
You know what I thought was interesting, Ness, and I don't know if I'm just nitpicking, but when they asked the governor, what are you going to use this money for? I didn't hear anything like, we're going to use it to bridge, bridge finance people with some, cash in their hand now to make, because we're getting Daphne on the phone at 9:15 to find out about the stimulus checks, but I don't know, just thought that was interesting. But I want to read this from the congressman's Facebook. Yep, Michael F. Beast Nicholas, our congressman, writes...
I caught that.
Oh, you did? The largest federal direct payment, $141.5 million to the government of Guam in history, is en route through the CARES Act we passed in Congress. We have urged the governor to manage local cash and prioritize paying tax refunds and allow these federal funds to pay for ongoing COVID-19 operations, which are 100% of unbudgeted government operations at this time. We've also received a request from the governor to assist Gov Guam in gaining access to a credit facility reserved for large jurisdictions, and we have heard her concern about using some of these direct $141.5 million payments for government shortfalls. We'll work to help you, Governor. Your congressional office is committed to bringing the maximum amount of relief and support to the people of Guam, that we may emerge from these times a stronger island and people.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how much I want to, take stock in a Facebook post, but, it almost seems like a credit war, because if you look back at the beginning of this, the congressman had put up something like, I'm not going to come to Guam because I don't want to expose you guys to COVID, and then I think the next day we had our first 3 positive cases, so I think he's just kind of been over there, and I'm not sure if he's directly involved in this, and I know he's not, but apparently everyone's trying to take credit for it.
Yeah, well, it is an election year.
Oh, what? It is an election.
I almost forgot.
Forget that sometimes.
God, what? Okay. Well, hey, Ness, thank you. Anything else you want to add in closing here?
No, we will continue to monitor and lots of breaking stuff, and so, yeah, it's a crazy time that we live in.
I tell you.
Stay safe.
That is an understatement. Wash your hands, Ness.
I will.
Okay.
All right, take care, guys.
Okay, guys. 8:45 or 8:41. Hey, we're also going to go over to the Department of Corrections and talk with Major Anton Uggan about what's happening there at the island's prison. Of course, the Attorney General. That was kind of the big reason he said that he released these 2 perps that were involved in that Harmon Breeze incident. So
not just them, though.
Right. Okay.
They're issuing these notices to appear if they're non-violent
offenders.
Right.
Hey, and that was just, so with this interview we did with the AG yesterday, I put it up. It's on our KUAM News YouTube. We had Adrian had heard from the victims yesterday. Obviously, they're very, very upset, and what the Attorney General come out and said was that nonviolent offenses